Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of, we're studying the Quran, and we are on Surah 38. And along with Bogi, who is my usual co-host, we do have a couple of other people. And so I'm going to ask you both to introduce yourselves however you would prefer. Mohsen, for example, tell us something about you.
Hi, Aaron. I've been an ex-Muslim for a while now. I initially got involved into researching a lot about Islam because I had a lot of questions, and then coming from India, I found a lot of intellectual satisfaction with Dr. Zakir Naik. I'm pretty sure, like any Indian or Pakistan or any person from South Asia knows him, and he's been an apologist that really appealed to me. But then slowly, when I started to reason with more people, with a wider audience, I mean, all those explanations started to crumble down, and then I don't believe it anymore. So that's where I am at.
I'm familiar with Zakir Naik. I got very excited when I went to India that somebody said that they were working on getting a meeting between me and him that I could record. And I didn't expect that to happen. And in fact, it didn't happen, but I was very excited that people were at least trying to work toward that end. Anyway, and thank you very much for your introduction. Next up, Nadir, tell us about yourself, please.
Oh yeah, my name is Nadir Ahmed. I'm located here in Florida. So yeah, I guess I've been, kind of specializing in the study of Islam and science, and I've had many discussions and debates on the topic of the Quran and science, in which we show that there are really a lot of amazing facts when it pertains to science in the Quran. Like, for example, there are absolutely no scientific errors in the Quran, which is amazing. And the fact that there's actually statements in the Quran which agree with modern science, things which scientists have just discovered today. Yet they were mentioned 1,400 years ago in the book. And so not only that, but I also help in prison ministries, Islamic prison ministries, and Islamic outreach over here. And I've had a chance to look at some of your debates, Aaron, and I must say they're very interesting. I spent a lot of time watching them where I probably should have been doing something else. So definitely, Aaron, you're a breath of fresh air. I enjoyed your shows.
Well, thank you very much. As far as no scientific errors in the Quran, I think we have quite a few already listed in this series. But I mean, we certainly never saw the moon broken in half, for example. But we'll get to things like that momentarily. And of course, my usual co-host Bogi, say hello if you would, please. All right. He waves hello. Okay, so the first thing I want to bring up is that I did not know that there was that EID or IDE or however you say I had no knowledge of this holiday until today. So I was a little bummed that we booked on a holiday. I didn't mean to do that. So real briefly, just as an aside, what is IDE?
So so this is basically, there are two religious holidays in Islam. And this is a religious holiday commemorating the sacrifice which Abraham made with his son Ishmael, which later, in the end, he was actually, Ishmael was saved and not sacrificed. So that's what today is.
Okay, very good. All right, so we're going to begin. I have some notes from Bogi, and I know you've got some audio issues, Bogi, but I do need you to try to crunch through that because we were going to start off. Bogi, you got your audio on?
Palatable? Is this usable?
Nope, I am not hearing Bogi.
Is this usable? Is this audio usable?
I'm sorry, what?
Is this audio usable?
Barely so, but it does need to be a little bit louder because I can't hear you.
Okay, I can improve the loudness. Is this better?
Yeah, I'd rather that than not be able to hear you at all. So I mean, there is some audio issues, but if you need to throw something in, just make a quick statement, and we just want you to start.
I can make it louder for sure, because that
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, so is this better?
You're still popping, but we just wanted to get started.
I will not pop out. Stay away from the mic.
Okay.
Okay, so this is better. That's good. So welcome to everybody, I guess, especially the new co-hosts. Today we are discussing Surah 38, which is number 38 in the chronological order. And just to sweeten the pot with today's Surah, we have some very interesting guests, so I would like to see some input from them. Surah 38 happens to be the only surah in the Quran that is in the correct chronological order as it is in the book. So it is 38 on the book. It is.
How is it even possible to have only one surah in correct chronological order?
Well, if you mess it up properly, you don't necessarily have to have one. You may have zero.
Okay, that's not making any sense to me.
Could you clarify to me what do you mean when you say, how do you determine if something is in the right order?
The Quran has a chronological order. It's the order of appearance, if you like, in a theater, right?
Yeah.
So reading it that way gives you, I think, a better understanding of how the Quran builds up the theology, how it builds up the legal system.
I was told that I would get a better understanding of the Quran if I read it in the order of revelation.
Because if you read it by the book order, your second surah is what? Al-Baqarah, right?
Right.
Right. Try to do that with somebody who does not know anything about the Quran. Read the Fatiha, and then the next one is the Holy Cow. And your brain is blown, and you don't understand anything after that.
Could I interject?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, so, I've worked in the prison ministries over here. In fact, if you look in the prison system in like Maryland, 1 out of every 4 of those prisoners have converted to Islam. Now, majority of them read the Quran, understood it, and it changed their life. So I think we're creating a controversy out of something when there really is no controversy. And a lot of those people have, reading skills of maybe a 5th grader when they come into prison, but yet they can read the Quran from the beginning to the end. They don't worry about this chronology stuff, which you guys are worrying about, yet they can understand it. So I think we need to move. If this is really your only criticism of Islam, it's pretty bad. I think we need to move on to maybe some more better stuff.
Well, this was actually not a criticism of Islam. I was told by a number of sources that the Quran was not written in, or that it is not printed in the order of revelation, and that it would somehow be better if I read it in the order of, if I had read it in the order of revelation as opposed to the way that it's normally printed. I have had trouble reading it only because I don't understand what references it's making, and so I need a number of footnotes. Maybe the version that you're giving these people has plenty of footnotes, but I've had to read multiple translations just to compare them to find out what it's really saying. And I don't, so far, see that there's any significant difference between the order of revelation and the way that it's printed. I'm not even sure that the order of revelation is correct, because what is to indicate that? I have no idea. But we're a third of the way into it. It would not make sense to change the order that we're reading these in at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, I think we have to be a little careful. Just because it changes someone's life doesn't have any bearing on the truth of it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily make the Quran true, because people change religions for all sorts of reasons, whether it makes their lives better or not. And it's got no bearing on the truth of it.
And that's a very good point. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. So did anybody have any questions or comments on any of the verses that were mentioned so far? I guess not. Okay. So, and I'm guessing Bogey is out because of his, I know you've got notes, Bogey, but I understand that you have audio issues as well. Okay. So
depending on how bad my audio issues are.
Okay. Well, I'm still having some trouble hearing you. You're quiet again.
Okay, I will louden myself up. Is this
All right.
better? Okay.
Yeah, a little bit louder, and then I can hear you. And yes, there's pops in the audio, but at least I can hear you.
Okay, we'll keep it that way.
Okay.
Okay, so where is this joint in there? It is not a usual practice in the Quran to have these 1, 2, 3 letter beginnings in surahs. There are a few surahs like this. Usually we don't know. The explanation is we don't know. Early Muslims basically said, we don't know what these disjointed letters mean. And obviously there is no way of knowing what they mean. Later,
So this
Muslims,
is not supposed to say a word?
no, this is just the letter Sad.
Okay. This is
This is
Sad
just-
the name of a letter?
Yes, it's the name of the letter Sa, which is just like a S letter, but it's a deeper voice.
Okay. And we don't know why that is.
No.
Okay.
I think we already walked through one of these surahs that had a couple of letters in the beginning. I think it was Qaf,
Okay.
but I'm not sure.
All right.
So this happens. It happens sometimes in the Quran. It doesn't happen all that often. Later modern day apologetics has it that this is to make the checksum of the Quran correct, because Allah said he's going to, deliver this Quran to the people, and he's going to make sure that it cannot be corrupted. And one of the way you cannot corrupt a document or a file is to create a checksum of it and make sure that the file matches the checksum. So if you needed to match the checksum, you need to probably, if you change anything in the Quran, the checksum would be different. There are two problems with this apologetic, and one of them is we don't know the checksum.
Okay.
We don't
Right.
know what it should be.
All right. I don't. Go ahead.
Yeah. So other apologetics is that this is an extra miracle, that
Okay.
we need to treat it that way.
Now, because of your audio issues, I know you'd sent me some notes that you'd made of this, and for the sake of the
Mhm.
audience, I'm gonna read those. I'll start reading those notes for you. Surah 38 is the only surah in the Quran that has the correct placement in the book order, which doesn't make any sense to me. 38 is in the chronological order and in the book order, and these are surahs that start with one or more disjointed letters. Early Muslims simply said they didn't know why these letters are there, declined to change it because they were the words of Allah, and moved on. And early Muslims consider these as miracles and specifically cherished them as such. Oh, apologize. Somebody else talk for a moment. I have excited dogs.
Okay, so generally your take is pretty good, unless the other guests want to have a different say about it. What I added to my notes here is a few things that would embellish a few items that came up here. The first thing that I want to bring up immediately off the bat is Surah 38 has 2 abrogations in it.
And once again, for the audience, an abrogation is where
An abrogation.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Your voice is probably better than mine.
Whoever wrote the Quran made a correction later on so that the text corrects the text later on? Okay.
Yeah. So again, this emphasizes the importance of the chronological order. Here today, Allah considers this verse to be the correct one. 20 years later, no, he changes his mind. Okay? So we are going to discuss that, but we can mention it here. 3870, only this has been revealed to me. This is that part of the Quran which is so far being revealed to me. and I don't know any better? Well, no, because in Surah 9, verse 5, there are more revelations there and more actions to be had. And the last verse of this surah is also abrogated by the same verse again. Okay, so I'm not sure this is the first mention of the book in the Quran. I think this might be chronologically the first mention of the Quran in the Quran as the Quran.
Okay. I just want to add that the reason for the revelation of these ayat, and I think when Abu Talib, one of Prophet's uncle, fell sick, some of the people from Quraysh entered and asked, like, "Hey, your brother is insulting our gods. He does such and such, and why don't you send him and tell him not to do that?" And basically, they're having this conference, and Abu Talib apparently seemed to support Muhammad, and Muhammad just said, like, "Okay, I have come here to bring the message that there is one God," and these are probably the first signs of things escalating and people try to compromise between the tribes. So this is one of the reasons why these ayats were revealed.
If I could also add something.
Yes, please.
So I think there's been some discussion on abrogation, but my advice is when you read the Quran, I would not worry about which verses are abrogated, because this comes when you kind of get more of a higher level studies of the Quran. So if you guys are just beginners or you just want to understand the message, I would just pick up the book, read it from cover to cover. You don't have to worry about which surahs come first. As I said, and I'm still a little bit confused on this, there are people in the prison system who have the educational level of, like, let's say reading level of a fifth grader, yet they're able to understand, comprehend, and I'm still perplexed. How is it you guys are just getting lost on this? And I think maybe one of the reasons why is because you're worrying about really things which are irrelevant right now, like what those first three letters represent, abrogation, things like that. I wouldn't worry about any of that. I would just pick up the book, read from cover to cover, and if you still get confused, you can call me. Maybe I can look over your shoulder and I can help you out.
Okay, well, to give you an example of exactly what the issue are, you told me that you hadn't actually read the blog post, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But in verse 10 and 11, for example, depending on which translation you read, it could be a very different message. And if I'm somebody with a fifth grade reading level and I'm in a prison and I'm just determined to believe something, then all I need to understand is what the words mean. I don't need to understand anything deeper than that. And I can make myself believe that, at least according to believers, what believers have told me about how they believe things. So when I read the verse 10 and 11 in one version, and like in Abdel Halim's translation, it says that you're supposed to run a rope up to the sky and climb that all the way up to the sky and see if that eliminates the source of your rage, which doesn't make any sense to me. And then when I read in the same verses in clear Quran, it doesn't mention a rope. It says that the unbeliever should turn to heaven, then sever. But it doesn't say to sever what, and that doesn't clear either. So when I look at Luklex, that translation says that the unbeliever should tie one end of the rope to the ceiling and the other to himself and then sever. And again, doesn't say what sever means. But then when I go to Quran.com and read that version, it says that the author should have the rope tied to the ceiling and use that to sever their breath. So if you put all four of them together, it seems to say that the author is telling unbelievers to hang themselves to see if that calms them down.
Well, can you read the verses for us real quickly so that we can, from any translation, just so we can have it in front of us and we can see what it's actually saying?
Sure. From Abdul Halim's version, give me just a moment, I'll back it up. He says, 10, do they control the heavens, the earth, and everything in between? Let them climb their ropes. Verse 11, then, or their armed alliance is weak and will be crushed. So the reference to let them climb their ropes, what is that talking about? And I have to go to the footnotes for Abdel Halim's version of that.
Isn't that referring to people who think they control the heavens and the earth, which are, for the majority of people, are not going to, they don't believe that, but people like a pharaoh, or maybe like the leader of Japan who thought he was God.
No, that is not, that's not the interpretation I get out of this. So they're
Okay.
talking about unbelievers,
Mm-hmm.
and and they're doing kind of the God of the gaps fallacy thing, where they say, if you can't control the heavens and the earth, then what authority do you have? And so we have to just defer that maybe God does, or
Mm-hmm.
whoever is pretending to speak for God has this power.
Yeah, it says, or is there dominion of the heavens and the earth, and what is between them? Then let them ascend through any ways, and then it goes on, and they are but defeated among their companies of disbelievers. So it's talking about people who claim the same authority of God, and I think
And so
that's
that would
what's
be anybody that says that they don't believe what any prophet of any religion is saying. Then they're gonna that prophet of whatever religion is going to typically defer back and say, well, I have the authority of God, and God controls everything, and God explains everything, and if you can't explain it, therefore God.
I didn't get that. Maybe we can move on to another point.
Okay. All right. On moving on,
So
and
I just want to add to this point of
yes.
understanding the Quran. Well, I think different people have different levels of understanding. And then, so for example, right, I know people in my community back in India who don't even know Arabic, who have not even understood the Quran in Arabic. Like many people like to say, if we try to criticize the Quran, they say like, hey, do you even know Arabic? Or, have you ever read the Quran in Arabic? But then they're totally okay with people accepting Islam who don't know Arabic or who don't understand the Quran in Arabic. Second point is, I know people in communities, and I'm sure many people do, who don't understand, who have not read the Quran and still accept it. I mean, so accepting something or understanding something, you just go and tell them like, hey, prophet flew to the heavens on a winged horse, and they'll just believe it. Like, wow, praise be to God, So
Yeah.
it really depends on how much of a critical eye are you trying to put to the Quran in trying to understand it.
Well, let me tell you why I believe in whatever the Quran tells me is because I've actually, going back to what I said earlier, I've seen that there is scientific evidences in the Quran which is undoubtable. It is unchallengeable, in which it predicts. There's many. Well, let me back up. There's many statements which scientists have just discovered recently today, yet they were mentioned in the book 1,400 years ago. Not only that, but what is also astonishing about the Quran is that it actually corrects the scientific errors of the Bible. So when we look at this evidence, we see that it is impossible for a human being to come up with this kind of scientific information. So once we look at that, and the fact that there are absolutely no scientific errors in the Quran,
Except that we have a long list of them just in this series already.
Well, why don't you give me one?
Okay, the Earth being a flat disk, it's basically a map put out on a table covered by a giant crystal dome with windows in it to let the rain in.
Well, if the Quran really said that, well, then you're absolutely right, Aaron. It would not be the word of God. It would
and
be
the moon
a
being
fable.
cracked in half.
Well, let's start with the let's start with the moon with the Earth being flat. If the Quran said that the shape of the Earth is flat, this can't be the word of God, and I would be wrong about that.
Okay,
So,
well, then we're
Aaron,
going to be talking about an earlier episode.
could you show me the verse where it says that?
I'm going to have to go back through my previous posts
Okay.
to find that one, and then I would have to read them. If you want to do a subsequent discussion on any of those previous, or I'll tell you what, I will. If you have this blog post, you can look back at the previous ones, and if you want to discuss any of those points that I brought up there, we can do a separate hangout where we can talk about those.
Yeah, and in fact, I've actually had many discussions. I've looked at all of these claims for scientific errors in the Quran, and let me just tell you a little bit of the story behind that. They are all laughable and ridiculous because I can tell you the Quran doesn't say that. And so when I say the Quran is unchallengeable, this is what I base my evidence off. People like Abdullah Samir, the Rationalizer, Sam Shimon, David Wood, Christian Prince, all these people who claim to be critics of Islam, I've actually invited them. Can you please ask the same question I've asked you, Aaron? Show me where these scientific errors are. Every one of them ran away. Why? It's because I'm a person who actually researches these things and looks into them. And so I think one of the reasons why there's really no discussions on these things is because they fear public embarrassment. I've gone so far as even offer them money. Hey, listen, I'll pay you if you could find me a scientific error in the Quran. And all of them have cowardly ran away. But anyways, I definitely want to have this discussion with you, and I can prove to you. I mean, maybe it might be outside of this discussion, but I would not only like to show you that the Quran doesn't contradict science, I'd also like to share with you the scientific evidence proving that it is an absolute miracle of God.
All right, I'll tell you what I'll do.
Yeah.
I will go back through the blog posts and I will find, because I can think of a handful that I've made that are specific here. So I'll find the specific things that the Quran says, and I'll quote them from whatever sources I had listed there. And we'll have another conversation where we talk just about the ones that the errors that I found in the Quran so far.
Sounds good. And same for you, Mohsen. If you want, we can also talk, and we can go through, I can share this evidence with you as well, and you let me know what you think.
Yeah,
Okay, no,
I mean, I hate to break it to Nadir, and this is with all due respect, but I think like he's running around 15 years back on his research, because even the modern apologists actually reject the notion of scientific errors, scientific miracles in the Quran, and all you have to do is like go to Hamza Sorts's web, I think, which Aaron has met before.
yeah, I've talked to Hamza a couple of times and got
Yeah.
him to back down on 2 of his claims.
He has backed down on a bunch of claims, and then he has backed down. He even gave a talk, actually. There's a 45-minute talk, if you see, Understanding Islam and Science, and in which he's appealing to Muslims to stop using these 1400 years ago a logic, if you will, or like only Quran could have known that, for example, that iron comes from space, or that moon has reflected light, and it's all been debunked. Like I said when I started this talk, this all comes from, like, in the 1980s. There was this revolution of Ahmed Didat and Zakir Naik, and then they've been thoroughly debunked. I'm actually surprised that even in today's like in 2019, August 2019, people are using this. So I mean, I'll be happy to do that conversation with you, but I think that's beyond the scope of this.
Let's just tentatively schedule that, because I don't want to do it on another holiday. I mean, I can make the schedule open to whatever is best accommodates both of you. So it doesn't have to be on a Sunday at 5 p.m. Greenwich time. It can be whenever suits you best.
Sure. Yeah, I'll send you some dates. Oh, Muslim, just to respond to you, let me tell you what Hamza Zortis is against. He's against people who misrepresent him and his position towards Quran and science. Now, I have some email exchanges with him. I have shared my evidence, especially how the Quran corrects the scientific errors of the Bible. He had no problem with it. He didn't really respond in detail, but from what I understand, he's cool. He's okay with it. So as far as you're saying that scholars are all against this, I don't agree with you. I have not met anybody, as far as scholars, who says, oh no, what you're doing is wrong, Nadir. So I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I'm not sure what you are doing precisely. I wasn't trying to say that, but what I'm saying is, so long as your line of reasoning starts with, there are scientific miracles in the Quran that people couldn't have known 1400 years ago. This exact line of science, and I'm pretty sure you know that Dr. Zakir Naik was all about this. Is that correct?
Well, let me tell you what the score here is, Mohsen, which is undeniable. All those so-called critics of Islam, whether they call themselves David Wood, apostate prophet, answering Islam.
Well, I'm not talking about those people. What I'm talking about is...
Mohsen, let me just finish. I'm telling you what the score here. They have all cowardly ran away from just a simple discussion like I'm having with Aaron. I say, hey, listen, guys, let's talk about this. You said there's errors and all our science claims are baloney, and I've watched your YouTube videos. Would you like to talk about it? Just Starbucks cup of coffee, something like this.
I'm not running away from you, and I have specifics.
You're okay, Aaron. I'm okay with you. But and I have shown you, Aaron, the rationalizer cowardly ran away. Abdullah Samir
the rationalizer
ran away in front of you. I made sure for you to witness that. So
you made sure to make me witness that the rationalizer no longer does apologetics. He says he wants to move on with his life. That does not make one a coward.
Well, he just posted a video of me a couple of days ago, well, about a week ago, actually, if you look on his site, and people were thinking he's back. But the issue here, I'm not looking for a debate. If you want to debate, I can debate, but I'm just looking for a nice discussion on those videos you're creating.
We're not talking with those other people, so we're not going to be talking about those other people.
Okay. So Mohsen, I just want to let you know the score. It's your guys's that are running away. It's your guys's which cannot face me in any discussion on the topic.
Pardon me, when you say your guys, I mean they're not my guys. I don't associate with them or.
All right. I just think it's strange how none of these so-called critics of Islam and science want to even entertain a discussion with me. There's something wrong there, and we need to ask ourselves.
I don't know about anybody else, but we're not talking about anybody else right now.
Okay. Bottom line is,
I'd
my
be
door is always
happy
open for discussion.
All right, now this series needs to continue where we talk about just the surahs that one at a time, being systematic. But if you want to do a review for the purposes of discussing science of the Quran, I'm all too happy to go through each of my blog posts to put specific claims that the Quran makes and compare translations. If you have a favored translation, let me know what it is, and I'll make sure to include that as well. And then we'll just have a list of those claims in the Quran, and then we can talk about those in a subsequent hangout like this one. And it can be scheduled for whatever day you prefer.
Yep. Sounds like a good idea.
And maybe Bowie can get his microphone fixed.
Yeah, it is a network issue, unfortunately. Can't fix.
Do you have another mic, Bogey, that you can plug in there real quick?
I have. I can switch to it just for a second.
Oh, yeah, but that didn't help. I'm sorry to say. All right, so moving on, and I'm not referring to Bogey's notes anymore. I'm just going to try to scale down the list. There wasn't that much substance in 38, I thought, until we get down to the mention of the genies. Unless, Bogey, did you have something on your notes that need to be hit first?
I think I have 38.5. This talking about the Holy Trinity. Like it or not, people globbing gods into one, multiple gods, aka the Trinity.
And this is which verse did you say?
This is verse 5.
Verse 5, okay.
Verse 5.
Where it mentions the previous religion?
It mentions the previous religion. I would say it is quite safe to bet on a Christian religion. I'm not entirely sure of this, but the Quran is really derogatory here about explaining why Muslims consider the vast majority of Christians infidels worthy of the dealing with infidels. You know what that is. It's corning the idea of gluing gods together into one. 38.6, the leadership told them to stay away from these false prophets and keep worshiping your God. I like your take that now. Yeah, yours is also built on faith without evidence.
Yeah.
Correctly there, punching that eye in the middle. Yes, it actually in 38.7 calls the gluing of gods together a fabrication, and that's also a negative term. I don't know if the other guests here would disagree with that.
Just want to quickly jump in here. Aron, you said Aron.
Yes, thank you.
You say the lost religion refers to Christians, and I think the Quran verse says that it's all an invention. We have not heard any such claim in the lost religion, but the previous to the lost religion, they surely must have heard such a claim, right? About God being one. That's Judaism.
Well, no, that wouldn't have been as I understand it. The previous religion, the immediate previous religion, is talking about Christianity and claims of the Trinity, but the religion prior to that wouldn't have been, in this case, wouldn't have been Judaism. Although Judaism is the basis of Christianity, we're talking about the Arab world, and so they had polytheist religions that were in effect in that location before Christianity showed up. So as I understand it from my studies of the history of world religions in the class that I took in college, a professor there was postulating that in the conflict between atheist and I can never, Athanasius, whatever, that there was one guy that was said, and I can't get them confused which one it is, who lost the vote on deciding whether Jesus was a created being or like a prophet of God, or whether he was in fact God himself. And so the people who said that Jesus was only a prophet of God were banished from Constantinople and went to, I think it was Medina, wherein 200 years later that we have the emergence of Islam, something like that.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. This professor was postulating his hypothesis that Islam got the reason that they incorporate Jesus as a prophet and not as God was because of this influence.
Okay.
Okay. Any more?
No, I don't think so.
Then,
Yeah.
Okay. We can continue on then. We talked about 38, 9, 10, 11. They have vaults full of Allah's mercy, or do they own the heavens and the earth? This is kind of derogatory here in terms. What is between them and what is between them? You brought it up. You don't own the earth. You don't own the heavens. You don't own all of that stuff, and you don't make them ticks. Therefore, you don't have the power that Allah has. Again, if you look at this on a prima facie, these are claims that are not supported by evidence.
Yeah.
Right?
The way that I responded to that was just by calling the bluff. I mean, in verse 9, 10, when it says, do they of your Lord's bounty, mighty and all giving, do they control the heavens and earth and everything in between? My response is no, and neither do you. So you, again, have to back that claim up or it doesn't mean anything.
Yes. The only last one about remember start from the last, they won't wake up. So again, in 38:15, their demise is to be performed through a shout. Remember the shout?
Yes.
Yes. Again, the shout comes up, and it will be they won't wake up from it. Kind of shout. So yeah. I wonder if the people in prison get this kind of detail out of the Quran.
Well, I think the message here is basically there is a chastisement, a punishment for disobedience, for rejection of God's truth. So that's a message which is just not in the Quran. It's in actually many books. So I don't think that this is a unique message for the Quran.
Yeah, but is it a good message, though?
Well, absolutely. I think it is because this also, brings up issues of you have to check yourself. You have to make sure that, you are not going to do bad stuff. You make yourself a good, righteous person. I know when I read the verses like this for myself, I really check my behavior, make sure that I'm doing right in this world.
I would want to do right anyway, just because that's the way we function best as a society. I mean, it doesn't do anyone any good to piss off everyone around you, because then that ends up pissing off all your peers and your judges. It would be best to be a contributing person to society, and therefore we end up with a population mechanics strong drive to select or promote those who are charitable and kind and empathetic and that sort of thing. But what you have with these kind of claims, believe me or else, and if you don't believe me, you will be punished. These all imply that there isn't any truth. You can't call an empty assertion truth, yet every religion does that.
Well, first of all, the message of the Quran, when it talks about punishment, as far as the non-believer is concerned, if they do not believe in this message, that punishment comes in the next life. But in this life, they have religious freedom, chapter 2, verse 256. I think chapter 18, verse 27 as well. It clearly states that people have the freedom and the right to choose not to believe in this message. But of course, there will be consequences in the next life.
But also in chapter 2, it says that it's not our choice. It contradicts directly what you just said.
Well, can you show that?
It says that God has decided whether we will believe or not, and that he will close my eyes and seal my ears and then punish me for not believing, though he's the reason I don't believe.
Well, I think this goes back to the whole concept of predestination, and I think that's what you're referring to. That is, the Quran like a fatalistic religion? And no, I don't think it's not, because the way it's very hard to describe, because there is a bit of a mystery about this, in the sense like there is some kind of predetermination. There is something like that, but there is also free will as well. So it's a mixture of both. So yeah, there is going to be, some predetermined aspect, but you will have enough choice, or you have been given enough freedom for an indictment to be made against you. Now, the balance between the two, that's what I can't explain that to you. That's probably where the mystery is. So no, that argument, and actually the Quran talks about this very same argument you mentioned. In fact, I'm going to see if I can dig it up and I can share it for you. And it labeled it as false. So let me go ahead and see if I can find that for you. Go ahead.
Okay, while you're working on that, the very idea that we are to be punished over whether we believed, not over whether we were good or bad, because the Quran repeatedly clarifies that you can't be good if you don't believe. It doesn't matter what good things you do if you're a non-believer. The Bible does the same. So it just seems with Abrahamic religion, the only thing that matters is whether you believe, not whether you're good or bad. And the idea that it's going to punish you for not believing is itself an indictment that it can't be truth. That if it was truth, there would be no such demand. They wouldn't care. God wouldn't care if you believe it or not. Well, you're a good guy, so that's okay. As I mentioned in the previous post to this one, it was like, is God going to accept good people into heaven? If they're being good, just because they don't, even if they don't believe, like he rejects some believers when they're bad? Because that option doesn't exist either in Christianity nor in Islam.
Mm-hmm. So on this earth, of course, we have the freedom to choose, but the way God is going to judge people, what I disagree with is you're telling God, hey, you have to follow my rules. Here's what I think as Aron. I think it should be like this, and I think it should be like that.
You know what that means?
Yeah.
Because if we have a standard, if we have a definition, let's say, for what we can determine morality is, so that we know what we're talking about, so that we can all collectively agree, okay, is this moral? Is this not moral? We have something that defines what makes something moral. And then when we have a definition, we understand that this is what we're all talking about. We can then weigh other things against that. Now, some people will say that they have an objective morality, and actually what they really have is a subjective morality, meaning that they're trusting someone, a person who is professing to speak for God, to give God's subjective opinion about it, which obviously is not an objective standard. If you have an objective standard, that means that you know what morality is regardless of somebody's opinion. So when you remove personal opinions and you have a way to confer back, to verify whether this, regardless of whatever somebody else says about it, this is what we can determine to be moral, then you can weigh God against that. And then you have an objective standard, which religious people don't have. I'm not saying necessarily that non-religious people have that, but we at least have an independent type of definition or determination that could qualify in some philosophies as an objective standard.
Well, for the atheists and the people who do not base their morality off of God, they do. There are many moral atheists. There are many people, probably better than me sometimes. But here's the problem: their moral values are nothing more than nothing more than something from which they've imagined, a figment of their imagination.
Wait. We're comparing.
We're
comparing an objective standard that we know actually works and that maintains society in a demonstrable way, and we're comparing that to a magic imaginary man laying down the law, and you're saying that the objective standard that is demonstrable is the one that is a fantasy.
Well, if there's a fantasy God or a fantasy man claiming to be a prophet of God, don't believe in him.
Well, I don't believe in Muhammad.
Well, again, this goes back to what I was mentioning, that going back to the science, what the evidences which Islam is predicated upon. I would invite you to look at that first before you make that determination.
Okay, well,
let's
once again, because we're going to have to go back over past blog posts, then I obviously have already looked at that.
Well, let's do this. Let's look at it together, Aron.
Okay,
let's do that.
We will certainly look at it together.
Okay.
Whenever you want to schedule that, and we still haven't determined when that would be, and I would like to do that before we get off the line.
Sure.
But we're not ready to close up yet. I just wanted to the last point there is, like I said, if you are declaring a truth for something that you can't verify to be true, then that's not a truth. Every religion does this. But that's, you can't call it.
I would say that in our religion, it presents to us a lot of evidence So Islam doesn't do that. And that's one of the main core concepts of the Quran. If you read chapter 4, verse 115, who are the people who get punished? The people who get punished, in fact, if you want, you can, I'll try to type it up and read it for you, but just paraphrasing it, it says the people who get punished are the people who have seen the evidences in a clear fashion. So it's not just enough to hear the message, because in Christianity it said, well, okay, did you hear the message of Jesus? No, that's not enough. Not only are you supposed to hear the message, but you've seen the clear evidence, yet you rejected it, then it is those people who will be punished. So the dogma which you are complaining about, Aaron, I actually agree with you, but that's not what is being presented in Islam. So I'll read for you chapter 4, verse 115, if you like, and I can show you that Islam is more logical.
Okay, you're telling me the Quran doesn't do what I have already seen that it does.
No, it doesn't. It's a more rational religion. Let me read chapter 4, verse 115 for you, just so that...
Okay, I thought we were discussing 38 today.
Well, no, because, of course, there's different... the question which you had, the objection you had towards the Islamic religion, the answer for that is inside chapter 4, verse 115. So, and I think you're going to agree to this, and you will see that it doesn't present the dogma of the other religions. So here's what it says. And whoever opposes the messenger, talking about Muhammad, after guidance has become clear to him. So if it's something which has become clear to you and follow other ways, then those are the people who will then perish into eternal damnation.
Again, proving my point. So God punishes those who don't believe. You're not given evidence.
After the proof has been made clear to them.
But that's not what it says.
Okay.
Your counsel, you're given the word, you're given the assertion, the empty, bald assertion. And if you don't believe that empty, bald assertion, well, then you're going to die in eternal hellfire. It's got to be the stick of the carrot. You get the impossible promise of posthumous rewards, which, of course, religion will never have to pay up because it isn't real. There is no afterlife. And if you, that's for those who believe and pay tithe and treat the clergy, the men of the cloth, as if they were esteemed and wise and all of that. And then you get the stick also, which is the threat of the fate worse than death, where you will be burned and tortured and forever. And this is supposed to counter those people who are too wise to or not gullible enough to believe the first claim.
Well, let me tell you the discussion I have with my wife. Like, for example, when Barbara Bush died, now she died as a disbeliever. She heard the message. She knows what Islam is, but I told my wife, you never know. She has never seen the evidences and the rationale for Islam clearly. So who knows what's going to happen to her. So this is not the way you describe it. This is not the way we as Muslims view the world. We have a more rational perspective of it. Now, if someone has clear evidence and reject...
I have a question. Sure. So you said when Barbara Bush died, Barbara Bush, as far as I know, was a Christian.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes, from my understanding.
But she did not receive the message of Islam.
She might have. See, the thing is, did she see the proof and was convinced internally?
Right. So
that never happened.
In the current day and age, no one on the face of the planet didn't receive the message of Islam. It's everywhere.
It's not enough.
Internet.
I think I see where the problem is. I think according to Nadir, at least what he's alluding to is like when he says, if you have not seen clearly, according to him, seeing the message clearly is believing that message. If you haven't done that, then you haven't clearly seen it. And it's sort of circular because, I mean, even Quran says like, okay, rational people are those who, see the signs of it, and the fools are those who reject the signs. So it's a no-win situation for a disbeliever because, no matter how much you try to understand it, and then if you still reject it, people will just say like, oh, I mean, he's just rejecting even after seeing the signs. And I think like we discussed a little bit of it in the last.
Nobody knows who these people are who have been clearly seen the evidences for Islam, yet they rejected it. Nobody knows who those people are. Yeah. But there's also another thing I want to also mention, if I may.
Yeah.
One thing which is also different about Islam from the other religions when it comes to this, we don't believe that this life, this test, ends at the grave. it could be that in the next life they will undergo additional tests. So this is also another subtle difference, which a lot of people don't know. So therefore, the whole idea of God just burning people in hell because they disbelieved in him or they rejected him, it's more complicated than that in Islam, because you've got the next life tests. You've also got a temporary punishment, because inside of Islam, you can be punished temporarily in the grave or in the hellfire. But then once you get your punishment, then you can come out. In fact, there is a hadith which I'd like to share with you. It says, anybody who has even a mustard seed, I think it's mustard seed, of there is no God but Allah, means they have a concept of one God in their heart, God will take them out of the fire and cast them into the river of life. So maybe some people might go to hell. Maybe some people might get punished in the grave. But if they got that little grain of seed of faith in their heart, God will have mercy on them. Now, that also applies to atheists, because I'll give you a statistic. Majority of atheists do have a concept of God. And I'll get you that in just a second here. However, I did find my verses on predestination in which it refutes what you were saying, Aron, because what you just said about the fatalistic aspect, that is actually has been addressed. And if you like, I can read that verse for you.
Can we address a point before we move on? I think this is...
Yes, go ahead.
So you're raising a lot of points, and all these points need discussion in its own sense. And I think we're drifting away too much from the topic. But I mean, just to address to the temporary punishment, right? That is, so by your own admission, you accept that faith is the only criteria that's required to be able to go to heaven. Is that correct?
Well, you need faith, and as well as some good deeds as well.
Well, no,
regardless of the good deeds, though. Regardless of the good deeds. I mean, let's say you do all the bad deeds in the world, but you have faith of a mustard seed. You will be punished temporarily, but eventually you'll go to heaven, right? But there is no such provision.
It's possible. You may experience eternal damnation, or you may experience a temporary punishment.
My point is,
so in verse 28,
faith is the only sole criteria to make that distinction of heaven and hell.
Faith can get you, the hadith, or which I quoted, the statement said, if you have even a mustard seed of faith in your heart. And notice the hadith didn't say, no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. So that last, Muhammad is his prophet, is not part of that. So if you have a mustard seed of faith, then God can have mercy on you and bring you out of the hellfire. But who those people are, will it happen to such people? We don't know. So my point, which I'm trying to make for you guys, is when it comes to the disbelievers and them entering hell, Islam is a little bit more rational than, let's say, Christianity, where if you look at Christianity, basically paraplegic children in India who worship Ganesh, they will all burn in hell because they haven't received Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and that's it. But Islam...
no, Christianity holds that if you haven't heard of Jesus, then it doesn't matter. That you only get damned after you've heard of Jesus and then still reject him. And Mormons teach the exact same thing. So you have...
That's what we call, that's a fabrication which they're imposing upon the text. If you actually go to the Bible clearly says that unless you accept Jesus Christ, then you will perish. And there's many verses for that. So also,
I'm not going to argue that Christianity believes a lot of things that the Bible doesn't actually say, or that they teach, that Christianity teaches things that the Bible doesn't say, and that is one of them. But still, it's the same tradition that Muslims carry, the one that you just described, that if you haven't heard it, then you're not necessarily damned for it.
Okay, I see. May I read this one verse of the Quran which addresses the question about why is God punishing people even though they were predestined?
I'd like to stick with this one, since this is what we're supposed to be talking about, and immediately relevant to what we're talking about right now was verse 28.
Okay.
In Surah 38, it says, but would we treat those who believe and do good deeds and those who spread corruption on earth as equal? Would we treat those who are aware of God and those who recklessly break all bounds in the same way? And my question to that, or in response to that, is what I mentioned before. Would God welcome into heaven those who do good deeds but do not believe, the same as he would turn away believers who recklessly break all bounds?
So the answer is pretty much, is the same. If they have a mustard seed of faith in their heart, let's say they're a very bad person, but they have that one mustard seed, eventually it is possible that they can come out of the hellfire.
Okay, so if you don't believe in magic imaginary beings for no reason, which it would be empirical evidence, scientific evidence in this case, then you're going to hell. You have to believe there is a God in order to be saved, and there is no alternative to that.
No, the message of the Quran is if there are gods which are magical, imaginary beings, you should not believe in them. Of course
Right,
not.
okay, so that's why we don't believe in Allah.
Well, now
Gotcha.
hold on a second, Aaron. This goes back to when we were going to have our discussion on the evidences for Islam, which will take place at another date and time. So, really, Aaron, the way I look at it, you're right now kind of in a learning phase.
It's Aron,
yeah.
please.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Aron.
Oh, Aron, I'm sorry. Yeah, you are kind of in a discovery phase, so have an open mind towards Islam. Look at what we present to you as evidence. And then you can make the determination, okay, this is just something imaginary. This is just some kind of folklore. But I don't think you're there yet. So let's first have that discussion, which will take place at another time. But see, even for the atheist, let's say there's an atheist, but as a verse, chapter 4, verse 115 said, did they see the evidences and the proofs clearly? Of course not. So what's going to happen to him? There's a open-ended question on that. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen to him. So what I want to convince you of, Aaron, kind of reassure you, is your objections about the irrationality of the message of heaven and hell, that has been addressed. It has been answered, and I think it provides a good solution to this problem. And what you're thinking,
I haven't seen that answer, and you're promising that you're going to bring it. I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be any better than anything I've seen so far, but we're going to welcome that discussion when it comes.
Okay.
In the meantime, what I'm hearing is to the yes or no question. Do you have to believe in God in order to be saved? The atheist cannot be saved. The answer is that atheists cannot. They're going to go to hell. Period. If you don't believe in God, so you're not judged on whether you're good or bad. You're judged on how gullible you are, and that's it.
For the atheist, if they have not seen the evidence and they have not seen the evidence clearly, then it's possible that they can get a second test in the next life. So they'll have to just wait.
Test?
I don't know the details of it. I can send you some information on that. But what I want you to understand.
Make a note then for our next conversation, because I'd be interested in the second
Yes.
test.
So I would just like to know from Nadir, and I'm pretty sure he knows the answer to this, which is the biggest sin in Islam? More than anything, more than murdering 100 people, more than raping children, which is the biggest sin in Islam?
So the biggest sin in Islam is, of course, associating partners as God, which means knowingly engaging in false worship.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
So polytheism is the greatest sin.
Yes, but polytheism is not, in this life, is not punishable. But if you do things like what you were mentioning, the murders, the rapes, and stuff like that, that's a punishable sin in this life.
Just a second. For those who do not believe in Allah and the singularity of Allah, the punishment is death by hunting down.
What?
Okay.
I mean, they don't believe in God.
Surah 5, verse 9 makes it very clear. So let's not go into there is no punishment in this life. There is nothing in the Quran that has not been abrogated that doesn't say kill the infidel wherever you find them.
Whoa. Let's back up here.
I think we're drifting away too much.
Yeah. Boraz, I'm going to let you know that if you're going to try to claim that the Quran condemns religious freedom and teaches to kill the infidel and stuff like that, I'm just going to use you for target practice up here, because obviously you don't know the Quran, and I would not challenge me on that, because you're going to make a fool out of yourself. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the Quran doesn't teach that, but if you want to go toe-to-toe with me on that, I can go ahead and do it with you. So no, what you just said is wrong. The Quran guarantees religious freedom. Religious freedom was actually a big part of the message of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's why
Where does the Quran say people can believe whichever way they want? Tell me the verse in the surah, and I will believe you.
Okay, let me pull it up for you. Let's go to, I think it's Surah chapter 20, Surah 18, verse 27. Let me go there real quick. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Well, let's start with chapter 2, verse 256. Can you pull that up and just read it, please? 2:56. Surah
Yes,
2 verse
that,
256.
just a second. Let's stop there for a second. Chapter 2, verses 256.
Correct.
There is no compulsion in religion. Truly the right way has become clearly distinct from error. Therefore, whoever disbelieves in the whatever, great verse, I love it. There is one fault with it. It is abrogated by Surah 9, verse 5.
Okay,
And
now do
I'm
me one
just
favor.
looking up
Do me one favor,
abrogation list.
real quick. Show me someone
So
who's abrogating it.
my point is, let's
Wait,
move
wait, wait.
on.
You said this was abrogated. Who's abrogating it?
It's abrogated.
Who abrogated it? Just give me 1 second, guys.
Your Muslim scholars.
Okay,
They
who? Give me a
abrogated.
name.
I don't know, all of them. Do you have an abrogation list hanging around?
So now let's see what we're. Okay, now let me go ahead and address that.
List
Well,
of
first,
abrogated.
1 second, guys. Just give me 1 second here.
What I'm thinking is like we're going to be discussing these things when we reach to chapter 2 anyway.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me. Can I?
We can dig into
address
the
that?
details of when we arrive at chapter 2.
Hold on. Let me address that real quick. Can
I
I?
don't think the whole thing is there.
I'm not gonna let you get away with that, Mr. Boraz.
No, you're not going to let me get away
Can I
with
respond to you?
it. But I don't think we need to do it in this session.
Well, you made that claim, so now you're backing down, right?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, let me address that. When we read Ibn Kathir, do you read Ibn Kathir, Mr. Boraz?
I read, but
Okay.
I don't
Let me.
like a lot.
Yeah, you made a basis claim that someone abrogated.
Yes,
I'm sorry, what's that?
it's abrogated.
Okay,
It's
I'm going to give you the verse which abrogates it. Okay, how about that? And we're going to look at that. All right. So now let's go to first of all. Here's what we have here. If you read the Quran, what I was saying was right. There are verses in the Quran which clearly guarantees religious freedom. So the Quran is a book of peace, but he's quoting some other book which he thinks someone said, hey, don't follow the Quran. Okay, I've asked for that. And he said, well, I don't have it, or I can't get that for you. But what we see here is that the Quran is a book of peace. But now if that's not clear enough for you, let me give you another verse, which is chapter 18, because there's so many passages which clearly guarantees religious freedom. This is chapter 18, verse 29. And you need to deal with this. It says, and say, the truth is from your Lord. Then, now, Mr. Boraz, explain this to me and explain to me who's abrogating it. Then whosoever wills, let him believe. Now listen to this. And whosoever wills, let him disbelieve. Whosoever wills, let him disbelieve. So God is telling us, let him go, let him go. We know from the history of Prophet Muhammad, whether you quote the Sahih Bukhari, Imam Muslim, or any of the hadith, or even the Sirah Ibn Ishaq, Prophet Muhammad came across many disbelievers, and you will not find one instance of him taking a sword and killing somebody, says, accept me or else you will die. If there is, I challenge you here today, out of the millions of pages of history which we have recorded, show me one example. And answer chapter 18, verse 1. What was it? 18.
What I've seen
29.
is where Allah tells Muhammad to leave the unbelievers be, let them be unbelievers for a while. They will get their end in the hellfire.
They will, yes. So there is a concept that let them go because
they're going to be judged for what they believe.
Correct. God will
for what they don't believe.
Yes.
And so atheism, there's no way out. You have to believe in God, and then it's not whether you're good or bad. It's only whether you believe.
Well, no. Again, this is Aaron. Aron. I'm sorry. Aron, is it? Aron. You're misunderstanding. It is not enough to just believe. It's like if you disbelieve, but you've never seen the evidences, the clear proofs which were laid down, then your God is going to have to judge you differently. And this is clearly taught in chapter 4, verse 115.
Can we talk about that for just one? No, I don't want to talk about next time now. We will set up for specific references for next time so that I can, intelligently move from one point to another.
Well, I hope we're done with this canard that Islam teaches to kill non-believers who don't believe in the message or something like that. Because if I ever hear that again, Mr. Boraz, I'll make sure to take you to task on that. Because you still didn't answer the verse I gave you. You still didn't answer the fact that Muhammad never took a sword to any disbeliever and said, believe me or else you'll be killed. And I haven't even shared the verses, which actually teaches that you should go out and fight to protect the religious freedoms of the other religions. But if you want, I can share that with you.
I've heard a number of people say that it's in there. I haven't seen it yet myself, but if I do happen across that verse, I'll make sure to make an announcement about it.
Chapter 22, verse 40.
That's okay. That's your citation, and I'm talking about the one if the Quran actually says that you're to kill the infidel, as the Bible says, and I think I have seen a quote from that, from the way that it says it. When I hit across that, because I can't remember how it was phrased, if I find where the Quran actually says to kill the infidel, as the Bible does, then I'll make an announcement about that. But in the meantime, I'd like to get back on track and finish this up, because we've been in over an hour at this, and usually these shows will only go for about an hour.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the next collection of verses, verse 29 through 34, it talks about how Solomon was praising a parade of horses, and somehow the horses were so beautiful, so he was petting the horses that he got distracted and forgot to pray, and so he murdered all the horses because somehow it was their fault that they distracted him. And there, I guess, is supposed to be a moral lesson. Then if there's no comments about that, I'll move to 30.
Yeah, it's the story is pretty bizarre, because I mean you're punishing the animal just because you were distracted by horses, and it's just, I mean, I was trying to read and try to make sense of it.
But that was not condoned by God. That action was not condoned.
Okay. What I came across, and this might be of interest to you, Aron,
Yes.
Is that Solomon used to have winged horses as well. He had horses that had wings. So I don't know. You might have.
Yeah, well, it's getting better and better, isn't it? That gets us to the next verses, in fact, and this is the one that I think is the real meat in this surah.
Yeah, and then this comes from Hadith, where like Prophet is having a conversation. Like he sees Aisha's toys, the child bride actually. He sees her toys, and one of them is like a horse with wings made of cloth on it. And then they have a conversation about Solomon having, like Suleiman having a winged horse.
Yeah, well, that's a surah I haven't come to yet. And in this one, though, in verses 35 through 38, we have an interesting comment that that God gave, which I have to find the notes. Who is he talking about? Solomon again, apparently. Yeah. So God assigned genies to serve under Solomon, so that Solomon now commands genies.
Yeah. So this concept has always like bothered me growing up. Is I was always told like the jinns live around you. They can possess human beings, and the women were advised not to keep their hair open because like the jinns can possess them, and they really have a fondness for some women if they have to do so. And then they live all around human beings, and then they're invisible. They're made of fire. And in fact, Satan is not an angel. Satan is supposed to be a jinn. So now, which always raised the question to me, it's like, if they're always so surrounded by us, like, why can't we, really like feel them or sort of like have evidence for them, basically. And also one of the questions is, we're always told like Satan is always influencing you. But if Satan is a jinn, which is supposed to be just like a bigger version of human beings made of fire, how is he omnipresent? How is he present all throughout the world, sort of tempting people, and besides, like, what was he doing at the beginning of time? It's just like this whole concept of jinn requires a lot of explanation. I'm glad. I
think where a lot of this comes from is that you said, why can't we feel them all the time? I think we do. I think that the whole concept of the supernatural and of souls and of spirits and all that came from air, that people didn't know what air was. So with the jinn, for example, there should be two categories. There's the air elementals and the fire elementals, as I understand it. So a dust devil would be a literal devil. So people see a whirlwind comes out of nothing, throws your tent and your stuff around, and then it disappears into nothingness. So that's a supernatural event in these people's eyes. That would be a literal devil. And then if you get a very hot, very large fire, that can also create a spiral effect similar to that. So that and some fires have actually produced like dust devil or tornadic effect. Where the whirlwind will move on as being created by that. So this is what I think that they're coming up with this. They know that they don't know what air is, but they know that you will die if you can't breathe. So that's the breath of life that we see referenced so many times. And that's why the Bible makes reference to, like, when Jesus in one translation has his last breath, in another translation he gives up the ghost. In some places it says, where who knows, like in Ecclesiastes, who knows whether the breath of the beast goes into the earth and the breath of man goes into heaven, when in another translation, again, the word breath becomes spirit. Or, so spirit and air. Why do we call the hard alcohol spirits? When you open them, you can see the evanescence distorting the air. It's the same sort of thing. So they didn't understand atmospheric conditions. They didn't understand air, and that's where they got the idea of spirits. And then that was so ingrained into them for so many centuries that when they finally did discover what air is, they no longer associated it with that. They now think this other category of what they think spirit is, and now they don't look at it as being air. They think air is something else, and that's where I think the whole idea of genies came from.
So
in India, there's a huge practice. People pay money to get them depossessed. It's called ruqya, and then it's sort of like an exorcism. This whole topic is pretty bizarre to me. And then, like, when someone like Nadir walks in and tells us, like, like you clearly see the evidence, and then this absolutely makes no sense. So am I not seeing the evidence, Nadir, then?
I think all this discussion on the jinn, this is all conjecture, and this is things which I think you're basically imposing your understanding onto the Quran. Who the jinn are and what they are, we know very little about them. We know that they are a spirit, or we could say they're an entity created from fire, and that's about it. I wouldn't worry so. And again, Mohsen, I'm sure there are people who will try to profit, try to make money off of it. But sorry about that. Hold on one second. But that should not reflect on our religion. So there are these type of frauds everywhere.
Okay, just to be clear, what I said about what I think was the origin of the jinn, I grant you, that is conjecture, just like your God. So they are in equal standing.
We'll have that discussion later.
Okay.
Okay.
One more question. The question about Satan being everywhere. So if he's made of fire, whatever that means, like how you make something from fire, but apparently they're building these things which are material in nature, So that's that. And then how is Satan present everywhere in the world, tempting people?
I don't know. We don't have an explanation on how it works and how he does this. So that's just one of those things which there is mystery involved in this.
Okay.
And
yes, Satan has his job cut out for himself. He's pretty busy, I'm pretty sure.
the first question I had about Satan, I remember as a little boy when they first told me about this character, was like, what is his motivation? Seriously, what is this character supposed to accomplish? What does he want? What does he hope to do? Why does he want our soul? None of that made any sense. And of course,
because he's driven by ego. So basically, when God created Adam, he created him from clay. And by the way, Satan was one of the most pious jinns, if you will, before man was created. So there is not a place in this world where he has not done a sort of prostrated himself, and then he was the most obedient, most loyal, most pious, if you will, entity that worship God. But then when Adam was created out of clay, and then all the angels were asked to like bow down to Adam because it was God's best creation, and that's what God best can do, like create man. That's the best he can. But anyway,
is that in this surah or was it in the?
No, it's like the backstory.
We do have a nice segment about Satan in this very surah, but we want to get there. I think it's at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, talking about Satan's motivations is like he refused to bow down, and then basically he's driven by ego. Like, I wouldn't bow down to someone made of clay because I'm made of fire. I'm superior, and that's when like God
Well,
and
at least Satan thinks fire is superior to clay.
But anyway, that's where it delves down to.
Yeah.
Okay. And then verses 42 to 44, we have a reference to, stamp your foot. Here's cool water to wash in and drink. We restored his family to him with many more like them, a sign of our mercy and lesson to all those to understand. Take a small bunch of grass in your hand and strike her with that so as not to break your oath. And that is referring to, I suppose, according to Abdel Halim's notes, Muhammad, I guess, heard his wife blaspheme and threatened to give her lashes. And so God told him to hit her with a harmless bit of grass because he felt bad about it later on.
That was not
wondering
Muhammad.
why God doesn't tell people that, you know what, it's not okay to beat your wife.
No, that was
Was
not
it
Muhammad.
that Job?
Yeah,
was
it's
Job.
talking about Job. Yeah.
It was Job? Okay,
Yeah, it's Job.
Yeah, that part is
Job
not
had
copied
a
in this.
fallout with his wife. Job had a fallout with his wife because she left him when he got really sick. Remember the bet between God and the devil that he's going to make Job really denounce him, and he didn't. So, but during that period of Satan playing havoc with Job's body and his family, his wife left him, and he was like, I'm gonna really be beating you up if you want to come back. And apparently God then solved the problem. Job is one of my favorite stories, by the way. So he solved the problem, and he tells Job to beat his wife with a bit of grass so that he does not break his promise.
Okay. All right. If there's no more comment on that.
Am I wrong in this? Am I interpreting this wrong?
I want to check the next few verses to see if there's any meat there. I did have a question about 49 through 54. Is God assigning posthumous wives to people at his dinner table? Because that's the way I read this.
It's not assignment per se.
Well, I mean, am I reading this correctly, that after people that supposedly go to heaven die, they're going to be dining with God, they're going to be drinking with God, and they will have well-matched wives with modest gaze? What does that mean?
Modest gaze
So-
means shy.
That's bringing, in my opinion, rationality to insanity. If the Bible teaches that once you die, the normal relationships, which is sexual relationships with your wife or whoever, that's gone. It's ended. So that's the bad news of the Bible. Now, this is something which is normal. This is something which we don't have to apologize for. So God is correcting the previous scriptures' errors in canceling out something which is absolutely normal. And so what happens now, people will now start looking for that thing in this world because like, oh my God, this is all going to come to an end when I die.
So
I
the
think-
wives you had in life,
Yeah.
that you shared your life with, your partnership, the people you love,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get those in heaven. You are assigned different wives.
No, you can get those. Why not? You can. So the Quran says
Because
in the next life you
because
can
the
have
Quran
whatever you
says-
want.
The Quran says that they will be well matched, and
Mhm.
specifies that they will be your same age, which is a curious point to me,
Mhm.
and that they would have modest gaze. Well, these are, if these people are being assigned, and they have all these particulars, so it's not saying that you will have your wife, the person you will love, will still be with you. That's not what it's saying. It's saying you're going to be assigned other people.
Mm-hmm. You will have other people as well, but you can also have, if you desire your wife in this life, you can definitely have that as well.
But it doesn't say that, does it?
Where
It doesn't.
well, this is-
It says متكئين فيها يدعون فيها بفاكهة كثيرة وشراب. Right? Let's skip through that. They're drinking. It's non-alcoholic. Fine, good.
Well,
Okay.
I don't agree that
May
it
I
would.
show you? May I show you where Aaron, where you can have?
Rob, right? So they are shy young ladies he's talking about here.
So I just want to add to that. So in the tafsirs, it says these women are basically pure and free from filth and impurity. And what that means is like they're free from menstruation, relieving the call of nature, urine, spit, semen, pregnancies, free from all that stuff. So so that you can just enjoy your bliss, if you will.
Well, may I share with you the verse which clearly states that if you desire your partner in this life, you can have her as well. That's found
Do
in.
you have something to say about what I said, though?
Well, what's the objection there? I mean, what is the objection against sex here is what I'm really trying to understand.
You're being assigned wives that are different from the woman you spent your life with, or women you spent your life with, depending on your culture.
Why is that bad?
What's that?
Why is that bad?
You're being assigned new people.
Okay, you can be assigned this, but now let me read this verse because I think it's going to give clarity. Sure, you will be assigned this, but now read chapter 41, 31. It says over here, we have been your friends in the life of this world and are so in the hereafter. Now, this is important. It says, therein you shall have all that your inner selves desire, and therein you shall have all which you ask for. So if you don't want this, you don't have to have it. But if you want your partner in this life, it could be your wife or whoever, then you can have that. That's chapter 41, verse 31.
So what if I desire my wife to be pregnant then in the afterlife? Because I like the joy of being a father.
And so the Quran says, therein you shall have all which you ask for.
Okay.
What if she doesn't want to? What if
you see, we're getting in a problem where, like, what if I want, like, to have more money than Aron, for example? Let's say we both are in heaven. I want more money than him. I want more riches than him. And then, like, Aron might desire, like, no, he wants more than me. So we're sort of this infinite. Besides the logistics of heaven, I mean, I don't want to comment on that. What I want to get at is, there will be huras. Like, if you want to answer your question, Aron, there will be a lot of women that will be available for you. Whether it's your wife or not, I mean, it doesn't matter.
It just seems strange that why would you offer to have other women assigned to you? And it doesn't even matter that somebody else, some other human has added his own personal opinion to this, to say that, they're going to be free from spit or having to urinate or whatever. Who cares? Why would you have to have other women assigned to you? For what purpose?
Well, going back to what I was saying, that there is, of course, the regular sexual relations that you had with your wife, that's going to be available in the next life. And if you want more partners, you can also have that as well. My question is, what's wrong with that? Why?
So what's wrong with that is, at least I want to get in my word before I give it to Aron, is that this is the definition of morality not being objective, is because at one point of time you have that something is forbidden for you, and the other point of time you have something which is totally fine or acceptable. So that's not what I would consider objective morality.
And what is wrong with that?
And of course, believers would say that objective morality is whatever God says, and if God wishes to change his mind in the future, then so be it. That's objective.
And the other thing that is wrong with that on a completely different level is that we are no longer chemical beings, but obviously the people who wrote these stories didn't understand that the very thing that they're trying to impose, that it's not going to be that we're going to be some other version of ourselves and still have all of our chemical lusts and everything. This is like the pagan version of gods. This is why we're talking about eating and drinking when none of that would be necessary anymore. So this is just a fantasy people are writing to try to promote this idea that if you're good, well, you'll get to go to a great banquet table and you'll be given a bunch of women.
I think it makes sense. There's a much simpler explanation to this, is in order to tempt people to follow you and sort of like form a, to make people obedient. It's like, oh, you have all these riches that you're going to get in the future. So, just to rally support. It's a much simpler explanation as opposed to this being actually true.
Well, I think there is some intelligence behind this, because when you offer someone this, then it does two things. Number one, it reassures them that, hey, you don't have to, sow your seed everywhere in this life. If you wait, you'll get that which you're sort of looking for. And I know I've talked to many adolescents, and I've especially in my college days, and this has actually brought them a lot of reassurance. So then they're not so much, thinking about, okay, well, I have to go get this girl, I have to go get that girl, because if I'm just patient, if you are patient, then that which you're looking for, you're going to get in the next life. So I think that brings a lot of reassurance to a lot of people. So there is intelligence. And we all know that the sexual desire in the humans as well as the animals is one of the most strongest instincts. Birds fly, I don't know, halfway across the world to just reproduce. So when you appeal to that and say, hey, listen, here is a reward that you're going to get, then you're appealing to something which is a very strong instinct in man. And he's going to reconsider this and say, okay, now you got my attention. Okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. For this
So it's
reward.
a way of convincing people,
Mm-hmm.
just like I said.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know how much there is that isn't just quibbling over empty assertions here, but we did make mention of the golem spell is referenced in here, and I was a bit surprised at that, because that's a lot of people say that they don't, that what they believe is not magic, yet they do completely buy into the golem spell, which was an old Hebrew tradition that you make a clay figurine out of something, and then you breathe into it the breath of life as a magical enchantment that brings it to life. Which again goes into that breath of life thing that I conjectured before.
So what you're saying is that there is a, you could say a story which you see in the Quran, which you see is being retold because it's inside old fairy tales or old legends or something like that.
But it is still a fairy tale, even in the Quran.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying before I address that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, in verse 73 or thereabouts, and including some of before that, is what was the name? Mohin?
What's that?
Mosin, sorry.
Mosin.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't see your name at the moment.
Yeah.
Is what you referred to before, where you have Iblis who refuses to bow to the animated clay statue.
Correct.
That's a golem spell. And this, I think, is how ultimately how religion came about in the first place. Is people started making clay figurines and fantasizing, wouldn't it be great if we could bring this to life, if we could just breathe into it and make it start breathing?
Mm-hmm.
That.
Well, let me give you my understanding. When we see some similarities between what is taught in the Quran and, let's say, what was found in other books, the idea of religious borrowing or plagiarism, it doesn't work with Islam. Because in Islam, it teaches that prophets and messengers were sent to every nation of people on earth. That's found inside the Quran, chapter 16, verse 36. And it says that prophets were sent to every nation of people on earth, and they were given ceremonies. So that means there was a Chinese prophet, there was a Papua New Guinea prophet, or whatever. A messenger was sent to every nation, and so therefore remnants, fragments of that original revelation has been recorded and has trickled down. So that's why.
And why are these religions so dramatically different?
So what happened, one of the reasons why is because a concept of one God was given to them. But then after some time, things evolved. Things evolved where, in a sense, like maybe someone made a painting or a statue of a very religious person and said, hey, if you pray to this person, you're going to get good luck. And then people start following that. And then all of a sudden, that person becomes God. That's what happened to Jesus. Jesus didn't automatically become the God-man overnight. But the concept of the Trinity, it took 300 years for that to evolve. And as I forgot his name, Muhammad Hijab said in his debate defeat of David Wood, he made a very good point, which he won the debate on. He said, if you look for the first 300 years, you will not find a single person who believes in God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost, and these three are one. That is something which slowly evolved from church doctrine. Now, divinity was there, but not Trinity. So through the concept of evolution in people's thoughts, that's how you got these different religions.
So is it okay if it evolves 300 years later in Christianity, but like all of your law, like all of the hadith coming in after 300 years, is that okay?
Well, the Quran, the Hadith did not come in after 300 years. Hadith was written down during the life of Prophet Muhammad, and so
And
that is,
passed down, right?
Objection.
yeah, it's been cast down.
Objection. The hadith was mostly not written down during the life of Muhammad. In fact, nothing was written down during the life of Muhammad.
Not even the Quran was written down during.
Not even the
I
Quran
want to take.
was written down during the life of Muhammad. So let's not go there.
Well, yeah, but if you want to talk about that at another time,
Okay, yeah,
we
sure.
can definitely discuss it. But
We
both are
definitely
written
need
down.
to talk about that another time.
Yeah, I want to get.
let's-
I want to close this up, and I do have a question on the last verses in this.
Yes.
73 through 83. We have a story here.
That's
The
what I
angels
wanted
all
to
bowed down
address.
together. They're all bowing toward Adam, the clay figurine animated by a golem spell, but not Iblis, who was too proud. He became a rebel. And God said, Iblis, what prevents you from bowing down to the man I have made with my own hands? Are you too high and mighty? Iblis said, I am better than him. You made me from fire and him from clay. God says, get out of here. You are rejected. And it's interesting to note that there's a here to get out of. And my rejection will follow you to the day of judgment. But Iblis said, my Lord, grant me respite until the day when they are raised from the dead. So he said, you have respite till the appointed day. Iblis said, I swear by your might, I will tempt all but your true servants. Somebody want to give me an idea what that means?
Well, I think that's, as you stated, that basically it was Iblis who rejected God, and he was granted a certain period of respite.
Just a second. Just a second. Iblis did not reject God.
Okay, what's your understanding?
Iblis,
Okay,
Iblis didn't bow down to the clay man.
He literally on 79, on verse
yeah.
79, references God. He said, قال ربي فانظرني إلى يوم يبعثون. He acknowledges God.
I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. He rejected the will of God. Yeah, he rejected the will.
No, God rejected Iblis.
No,
Isn't
I don't think.
correct.
Yeah. My understanding is he rejected the will.
Okay,
and
so
plan
back
of
in
God.
verse 75, God says, Iblis, what prevents you from bowing down to the man I have made with my own hands? Are you too high and mighty? To which Iblis replies, I am better than him. You, referring directly to God face to face, made me from fire. You made him from clay. So
Right.
God gets angry and says, get out of here. You are rejected.
Correct. So God wanted him to bow down to Adam, but he refused. So he rejected God's will and plan.
Okay. So what is it? Why does he offer him respite? And why is this Satan character offering to tempt all but your true servants?
So this all goes back to the idea of why, God has allowed evil into this world. Why? What is God's will and plan on why there's so many religions, so much confusion, even this discussion here? And an answer as far as why, we don't know. But this is some part of his plan, and this is something which we believe in. But I couldn't tell you what God is planning at this point.
It does make an interesting point that if you have ever been tempted, then this would serve as proof that you're not one of God's true servants.
No, I don't.
Well,
think so.
Iblis said, I swear by your might, I will tempt all but your true servants.
Yeah, he will attempt it. Yeah, of course. And everybody is going to get tempted by Satan. There's no.
Well, no, not everybody. True servants are not tempted. So if you have ever been tempted, then you are not a true servant.
Well, that's what Satan said. But God has his own
Okay,
opinion.
that's Satan swearing by God's might.
But this is not a statement from God himself where he says, okay, if you get tempted by Satan, I don't consider you to be.
Okay, so what you're saying is the Quran doesn't mean what it says.
No, what I'm saying, you got to quote the right person. God didn't say that, that, okay, if you get tempted by Satan, you're not a true servant.
So God himself follows that by saying, this is the truth. God confirms what Iblis says in the very next verse.
Okay. What does it say in the next verse?
God said, this is the truth.
Which verse are you quoting?
84.
84.
I'm sorry, what's the whole verse?
Let's see. 82, Iblis said, I swear by your might, I will tempt all. Then verse 83, but your true servants. Verse 84 begins with God saying, this is the truth. Then God says, I speak only truth. Then verse 85, I will fill hell with you and all those who follow you.
Yes. And then, of course, the hadith, and it further clarifies that for those who ask for forgiveness, those who repent, these people, and those who believe, they will be saved eventually from the hellfire.
Well, those who ask for forgiveness, you have to believe in life. And if you ask for forgiveness when it's too late, the Quran specifies that too, then you will not be saved.
Well, again, it's more complicated than that, because you could have a second chance in the next life.
But it doesn't say that.
Based on your circumstances. You're not going to find that in the Quran. You'll find that in the hadith.
Yet, you said that anybody reading this in prison
right.
with a 5th grade reading level is going to know that.
Well, the person was that fits. Of course, if you look at people, majority of the people who convert to atheism, the majority of people
There's
who
no
convert
converting to atheism.
who become atheists or Christian or Muslim, did they look at all those apologetic arguments, pros and cons? No, very few people. Okay, so that's a criticism which can be made against everybody. So I'm sorry. What were the verses
It's
you
not a
quoted?
religion. Just to clarify, atheism is. Well, you can have religions that are atheists, some versions of Buddhism, Taoism, Chinese traditional ancestor worship. But when we're talking about atheists in general, we are talking about people who have discarded religion. They simply don't believe it.
Mm-hmm. But people can become very fanatical about it, right?
That doesn't mean that they believe in not believing. They don't have a religious belief. They don't buy the stories.
Can people who believe in atheism become fanatical about it?
Atheism, that doesn't even make sense.
Well, here's my question to you. And people who've chosen not to believe in a God or any kind of religion, can they become so fanatical about this that they see other people who believe in God and want to put them in concentration camps? Does that happen?
No. Again, you don't get any
There's
based
no
on
reason for
atheism.
us.
You don't have a
I think that's what's happening in China.
You don't have a belief in atheism. Atheism is when you don't believe in Christianity, in the claims of Christianity. You don't believe those claims. Do you believe in not those claims, or you just don't believe? You can choose, as you said earlier, you can choose to change religions if you like, and people do for ridiculous reasons. I've seen some really absurd reasons that people will change their religions. But with atheism, it's walking away from religion in total. It's like you're not changing faith, you're walking away from faith, period. All faith.
So if I don't collect stamps, am I a non-stamp collector?
My point to you guys,
Yes, you are.
Aron, and my point here is people who have the way you defined it, people who walk away from faith, who believe in no God, or who do not, let me rephrase that, who do not believe in
We can't
God.
believe in no God. That's just an impossibility.
Okay. Let me, my
do
point.
not believe in God. We don't have a God belief.
Yeah, who do not have a God belief. I want to make sure I say it correctly. What I see is they can become extremists, fanatical about their views, just as much so as a religious person. And we can see that in China. We can see that in the history of.
Are we saying that people can be people? I totally agree.
They can become very fanatical about their views.
Religious people can be criminally corrupt. Yes, they all can, because they're people.
Well, the example I gave you, they can look at religious people or people of other religions and decide that's a sickness you suffer from. You belong in a concentration camp where I can.
No.
That's not what happened.
That happens.
That's not what happened. You're mischaracterizing. Okay. If you're referring to Stalin, which is probably the only thing I think you could be talking about here.
What about Mao, Chairman Mao?
I don't know anything directly about what Mao. I only know about Stalin.
Mm-hmm.
And because he's the one that is most usually brought up. So I did some research on him and found out the motivations for what he was doing, and how he was initially trying to establish some sort of state control where there was where the Christianity was offering a political opposition, and prior to that the Jews were offering a political opposition. So they tried to crush both of those separately, and then realized that they actually have a political advantage by using the religion. So Stalin reinstated the Christian churches and employed them for his own purposes.
Mm-hmm. what is your interpretation of what's going on in China today by the atheists and what they're doing to Christians and Muslims?
I think that China has done an awful lot that has pissed me off in the last, let's say 30 years before they ever started doing this. So there's a lot of human rights violations across the board.
And I agree with that, because I mean, just because we criticize, we have to make this distinction of criticizing the idea that is Islam versus criticizing the people that are Muslims, or even trying to subjugate them or oppress them. So in fact, it happens all the time. It's like I myself stand up for Muslim rights, like for them to wear hijab or whatnot.
And I do too, by the way.
Yeah,
I had a meeting with the president of the American Dawa Association. I had dinner with him and Sabur Ahmad together. And I told the president of this Dawa group, I said that he and I have a common enemy. And that whereas I would fight him on these theological terms, with great enthusiasm, I said, you can also look to me as an ally where we have issues of freedom of religion and things of that sort. So where we agree, I will stand with you. But on these disagreements, I'll be an avid opponent, an enthusiastic one.
Do you see Christians as being a person who, or you say some Christians are actively trying to take away your rights and my rights?
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And then they say that Muslims are intolerant.
The recent Supreme Court case in the United States where a Muslim man was going to be executed, and he asked for a Muslim imam to be next to him when he was being executed. I know it's all delusion, but he still should have the right to have the religious representative that he prefers to be next to his execution seat. And the Supreme Court basically denied him on the basis that we don't care about your Islam.
Yeah.
And that utterly wrong.
It is.
And every I know agrees with this.
Yeah.
This is wrong. This is bad. This is not okay.
Yeah. No, I'm afraid,
And
much as I want to dive into this conversation, because this is one that I'm really passionate about, I really...
You say the atheists are going to do immoral things, and they don't. They really don't. There are usually secondary motivations, and I think the Chinese government
and there are Christian groups, there are Christian organizations that are trying to do terrible things to this country, and I've given speeches about them recently within the last couple of months. So if you want to look that up, but I don't have time right now. Unfortunately, I have another podcast that I have to do minutes from now. This one went an hour over. So I'm going to have to close it up. I think we got to the end of Surah 38. I want to thank both of my new guests and welcome them to the next discussion. Please, both of you, Nadir, I guess, priority, give me a day and time that works for you. So email me if you would, and we'll set that up. And I trust we can have other people join us like we did today.
Sounds good.
Can I get a very quick 30-second?
Yes, please.
Talking about like sending this message, hasn't God learned already that this message, this way of sending a message with the book and prophet is so ineffective that it's never worked in the past, and and he still continues to do that? Surely he has a better way to convince us.
Yeah.
It's so important to him anyway.
And it shouldn't be important whether we believe it or not anyway.
Correct.
And that the goal is already misplaced. But anyway, well, again, the next time we talk, it'll be about the scientific issues in the Quran, though we will probably do another episode maybe this month for the Quranic lessons on the next surah, and I'll make sure that you guys have a blog post about that at least a week in advance if I can. All right, so I'm going to have to close it up. I want to thank everybody for being on sincerely. Welcome, and very much appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm going to close it.